everyone, it's Chari here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make these simple paper ornaments with some acetate. It's kind of like a floating frame with the image in the middle. So I'm going to be using the Pa-rum-pa-pum-pum set, and then I'm also going to be using the snow from Let It Snow, and I'm going to be using some pattern paper from the Fa La La Petite paper pack. So the first thing I've done here is I've picked out some pattern paper. And this is going to be the frame on the front of my ornament. And I've also have some solid red cardstock, and it's going to be the back of the frame. And I've picked out two dies that nest inside each other, and I've made sure that the smaller die, which will be the size of the window opening, is going to fit around the image I'm going to use, which is the little rocking horse. So you can see the smaller die fits around the image pretty well. So the first thing I want to do is I want to cut the acetate that I have, the clear acetate I have, to the size of the larger square. So I'm going to use that large square die, and I'm just going to line it up with the acetate and run it through my die cut machine. And there is the square that is the larger size. And then I'm going to take the two and I'm going to line them up evenly spaced as best I can, and I'm going to hold them in place with some washi tape. And I'm actually going to cut through the pattern paper as well as the solid cardstock at the same time, so that I'm sure my frame will line up, since I'm eyeballing this frame alignment here. And so you can see I have two frames, and then I have the two inside pieces, which you could save for another project, or I'm actually going to use that pattern paper piece later. So I'm just going to take a little bit of washi tape, and I'm going to kind of tack down this piece of acetate to a piece of scrap paper, just so it will not move around. And I'm going to be using my stamp press for this because I'm stamping onto a slick surface, and I want to be able to go straight down and not wiggle at all. So the stamp press really helps when you're doing that. I'm going to take this snow stamp here. This is a great stamp for filling in a space full of snow. You don't even really have to line it up. It's great. So I'm just going to lay that down and pick it up with my stamp press. I'll be using StazOn Cotton White Opaque ink since I'm stamping on the acetate. I actually inked this one recently because I made the teddy bear ornament, so I don't need to add any ink to it. And I'm just going to ink up the snow, and then I'm going to line up my stamp press and stamp straight down onto the acetate, not wiggle. The great thing about the stamp press is you can let go and it pops right up. So you just want to continue doing this till you fill up that little piece of acetate with snow from top to bottom. And then you want to set it aside so that it can dry. Now StazOn ink does not want to come off your stamps, so I use this ultra clear cleaner by Hero Arts. This is actually made for clear stamps. So I think it's pretty safe to use it on my stamps. And I actually took it off the stamp press because it's really hard to scrub it with those foam feet on there, and I'm going to use this stamp scrub pad, and I'm going to squirt this cleaner right onto the wet side of my stamp scrub, and you'll see that this ink scrubs right off. And it's formulated for clear stamps, so I trust it to use it on my stamps. And then I'm just going to rub it on the dry side to get the residue off, and you can see that my stamp is all clean now. So for my image, I'm going to be using this little scrap of watercolor paper, and I'm going to be black embossing it onto there using black ink and clear embossing powder. This is how I like to black emboss things because I think it's much cleaner than using black embossing powder. So I'm going to use VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then I'll just cover it in clear embossing powder. Now you could also color this with markers or color pencils or paper piece it or whichever kind of coloring medium you want. I've just been doing the watercoloring with my inks today, so that is what I decided to do with this project. So you just dump the clear embossing powder right on there, and then I'm going to heat it with my heat tool. Now I'll heat the back of the paper a little bit first and then move to the front, and I think that it heats the paper a little more evenly and keeps it from warping quite so bad. Although this watercolor paper is pretty thick. I'm going to use a couple different things to color my image here. I have the distress markers, however, I wanted to use a couple of the seasonal colors that don't come in markers yet. Hopefully they will in the future. But to do that, I've just taken the ink pads and I'm going to apply them directly to an acrylic block and make myself a little color palette here. You could do this right on the craft mat too, but I find it much easier to take this acrylic block to the sink and wash it right off later. So I'm just going to add water using my brush, and this just is plain water, to the ink and pick it up and start coloring in. Now the markers are great for more detailed spaces, so I'm coloring in the tail and the mane with scattered straw here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of that water and I'm going to apply it to the marker, and it will just make the color even out and look more like watercolor. I repeated these same steps by doing the rockers in green, and now I'm doing the saddle in vintage photo. Now if you get too much water, I just got it off with my finger, or you could use a paper towel. But the embossing really helps you stay within the lines of the image. You can zap it with your heat tool and it will absorb pretty fast and dry pretty quickly, or you could let it just air dry. Another little trick that I like to do is to use some pearlized water. Now this is Perfect Pearls Mist, or you could just add Perfect Pearls to water. And I'm just going to squirt a little bit of it on my craft sheet and use it just like I did the plain water. I'm going to pick a little bit of it up with my brush, and I'm going to just use it on the mane and the tail of the horse. And it actually just gives a little bit of shimmer to the areas where you use this. So instead of doing the whole image, I'm just going to highlight a couple of things here and give it a little more interest. And I've cut out my horse, and then here's the trick with the piece of pattern paper. So this is the center of the frame, and I'm actually just going to flip it over, and I'm going to stamp the horse image on the back side of that pattern paper. And really, this is just a guide to cut out the shape, because it's going to become the back side of the horse on the ornament. So now that I have that cut out, you can see the pattern paper is going to be on the back, and that's how it's going to fit together, one on each side of the acetate. So now it's time to assemble our ornament, and I'm just going to put a layer of adhesive, I'm using Glossy Accents, onto the back frame. And I'm just spreading it around with my fingers so it's a little more even. And I'm going to take our acetate piece that we stamped the snow on, and I'm going to lay it directly on top of that frame. And just press around the edges. Now I'm doing the same thing to the pattern paper frame, and I'm adding some glossy accents to the back of the pattern paper. And then I'm just going to lay that on top. So our acetate is sandwiched between the two frames that we cut out. So now I can adhere down the watercolored rocking horse image, and I just want to make sure that I get glue into all those little areas that stick out, like his ears and his tail. just to make sure that there's nothing that's sticking out from the ornament. I'm just going to center him up and give some pressure to him. Now you can flip it over and put some more pressure on it with not as much chance of the image moving around. So for the back side, we want to put the adhesive right on top of the image because we really want the pattern paper. So you can just flip it over and line those two shapes up. And it kind of finishes off the back a little more by doing this. Now I'm going to make the hanger. So I've got the Lawn Trimmings peppermint twine, and I'm pulling it between my fingernails to kind of straighten it out from the curliness of it being on the spool. And I'm going to leave a pretty long tail. I'm going to make a loop, and then I'm just going to make a knot when I'm pulling that loop through. And that's going to hold that loop in place. And then I'm going to use these long tails that I left, and I'm going to tie a bow with them. You may have to fiddle with it to get it to look right. But once you get it where you want it, you can trim it off. I'm going to put a glue dot right in the center of the top of the frame. And really this is just to hold the hanger in place without it moving around. But I don't think it would hold forever with that one glue dot, so I'm adding some glossy accents underneath that bow. But the glue dot will keep it from shifting around until the glossy accents have dried. And then you can just trim the ends to the length that you want. And there you have a cute little ornament. And I think these would be great on a tree because the lights can shine through the acetate, and they'd also make great tags on gifts. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.